Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, keeping it free.blogspot.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You know, when I was a kid, in the America of the 1970s, literally millions of people would gather around TV sets to watch daredevils like Evel Knievel literally risk their lives jumping over cars, on motorcycles, and even trying to jump over portions of the Grand Canyon. We understood the risk involved. We understood that Knievel might not be alive at the end of the telecast, but yet we continued to watch. Right? Those shows were highly rated. Evel Knievel was a celebrity. And keep in mind, Evel Knievel was near death on occasion. Right? We understood the risks. We understood that he had survived some terrifying falls. Well, let's go further. NASCAR. Anyone who follows auto racing understands that the sport has had some spectacular crashes that have led to deaths in races. Even some legends of the sport, like Dale Earnhardt, lost their lives in races. In boxing, many fighters over the years have died in fights. Some of these fights were actually televised. The Benny the Kid Parrott fight in the early 60s was televised. And Benny the Kid Parrott ended up losing his life. Some of the biggest names in the sport have been involved in such fights. Right? Ezzard Charles apparently killed a man in the ring. The great Sugar Ray Robinson killed a man in the ring. In boxing, fans are so acclimated to the violence that in the recent Manny Pacquiao Manuel Marquez fight, as Manny Pacquiao laid on the canvas face first, unconscious, motionless, Manuel Marquez ran across the ring, hopped on the ring apron, and the fans cheered him. Right? The knockout was cheered, not booed. Manny Pacquiao didn't come to for a while. If you think that scene's out of the ordinary, just look at the Denis Lebedev-Roy Jones fight, where Roy Jones is unconscious for a long time, and when he comes to, he's not quite sure where he is. All of this brings me to what I consider a lot of BS going on right now in the mainstream media. Worse yet, a lot of this BS is coming from the stations that are actually broadcasting the National Football League. Right? We're hearing really ridiculous statements from commentators that the sport is too violent, that we now know the risk of injury, right? Because of what's been happening with athletes like Junior Seau, right? Because of now, medical documentation of CTE and head trauma, we've now had to listen to people say, oh, gee, will this sport continue? Right? Even now, Super Bowl week, I've had to hear Bernard Pollard of the Ravens talk about how a guy's going to one day die on the field. Right? Everyone is pretending to be completely terrified by the violence that they have celebrated for several decades. Where was this outrage when one of the best quarterbacks in football history, Johnny Unitas, lost the use of an arm? Where was this outrage when countless Hall of Fame veteran players were suing the league to get disability benefits. Where was this outrage when Lawrence Taylor broke Joe Theismann's leg and ended his career on one play? Right? You know, the early mortality of football players has been something we've tolerated really almost as long as the early mortality of boxers. Right? Some great players have died way too young. Reggie White, Orlando Brown, you remember him? The lineman who was blinded for a few years after getting hit with a referee's beanbag. He sued the league. He came back. He played. He died at 40. Right? You look at the early mortality rates and you look at the injury. This is something we've lived with at least my entire life. Let me answer Bernard Pollard here. Bernard Pollard said, you know, one of these days a player is going to die on the field. Bernard, it's already happened. Figure out your NFL history. 1971, Chuck Hughes, he dies on the field in a game. The violence in the sport has been known. So why the hypocrisy? Why are we all now pretending that we don't watch sports where the athletes can get injured? Right? All I'm saying is, as we have the debate, let's be real about it. I don't want to hear from guys like Bob Costas, who have profited handsomely from the National Football League for decades, who now suddenly, after again participating in NFL telecasts, feels a need to publicly talk about how the sport is too violent. You know, why not acknowledge that we're all accomplices in this? Why can't football fans actually come to the table and say, you know what? I watch the sport in part because the violence is exciting. Now, I understand the NFL lied to a lot of players. I understand the NFL for years pretended that concussions didn't impact quality of life and were completely unrelated to dementia, Alzheimer's, ALS, right? Such lying should be actionable. I'm not here saying otherwise. But is there anyone watching this video who really did not understand that this was a violent sport? To the players, all I can say is, didn't you know the sport was violent? Isn't that the mythology of the sport? Didn't the league used to market big hits? Weren't there games where guys were knocked unconscious on the field? Let's also keep the conversation as real as possible. By the time a player has made the National Football League, chances are he played in high school, right? His first game on a football field wasn't his first game in the NFL, right? These are guys who, most of them have played in college, right? And so, all I'm saying is, let's be honest about the violence, right? Boxing fans are. We understand the sport is violent. Even in the movies, you see movies like Rocky, where Rocky says, "Cut me, Mick," right? So he can have blood drain so he can see out of the eye so he can continue fighting, right? We talk about slurred speech in boxing. We don't go around pretending that yesterday was the first day we discovered that the sport was dangerous. My advice to football fans is to stop pretending that you just found out that football was violent. Also, what's going to happen to football in 10 years or 20 years? The same thing that's happened to football in the last 40 years since Chuck Hughes died on the field in a game. It's going to grow in popularity. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. I'm not here to say that players shouldn't be concerned about their health. They should be. But let's be all up front with it. The sport is very violent. We've known that for years. We've known for years that the sport can negatively impact a player's quality of life. And we've known for years that players have suffered very devastating injuries on the field. Paralysis, in one case, death, right? We've known all of this. Let's stop pretending that we haven't. Thanks for watching.